welcome to another edition of Beyond the Bench with Judge Ron Arnone. I'm Judge Arnone, and I once again have a special guest with me this edition of Beyond the Bench, my good friend and our Senator, Senator Guy Reschenthaler.
Thanks for having me on, Judge. I appreciate
Senator,
it.
Always good to see you and
Likewise.
spend time. I know we have a lot of interesting subject matter to cover today, so let's get right to it.
Sounds good.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you've been working on related to. I know one of the big issues that are kind of on your plate right now, if you will, in the Senate is pension reform.
Absolutely.
And I think that's important to all Pennsylvanians, just because of the kind of cost related to that, even though it doesn't directly or in some ways indirectly, maybe with the courts. But why don't you talk a little bit about some pension reform?
I'd be happy to. Well, right now, Judge Arnone, the pension is a $64 billion unfunded liability, and that's problematic. We owe those who have paid into a pension, we owe it to them to honor that pension. So we have to make sure that the pension system is solvent for so many people. If you take a step back and look at the total budget, we have so many budget problems because of the rising cost of the pension. It grows exponentially every year. So right now there's a plan, it's called Senate Bill 1. It's named Senate Bill 1 because that is truly our top priority in the Senate. And what that does is it would change the pension for new hires. And I want to stress, it would only change it for new hires. Someone that's paid a dime in the system, that pension stays the same. But new hires would go into a hybrid system. 50% of their retirement dollars would go into the defined benefit, the pension that we have today. But the other 50% would go into a defined contribution, more like a 401k, and that will save in the long term billions of dollars for the Commonwealth.
Well, I do bring that up first because I do know, and you even correlated that by saying that it's Senate Bill 1 and how
Yes.
important it is. And I know that a lot of our listeners in this district are very in tune to this issue and how important it is to the Commonwealth as it relates to the overall budget.
Absolutely.
Well,
what's so great about our district, and I know we share Bethel Park and Upper St. Clair, but our district, our constituents are so in tune, and we have very savvy citizens that follow the news, and so it's easy when I'm out talking with local groups. They know immediately the problems that the pension poses, and when I say 401k style system like the private sector, it resonates with residents in the South Hills.
You have to be on your game in this senatorial district, don't you?
Absolutely,
Senator?
absolutely.
There's some pretty smart people here.
Very smart people.
Let's talk a little bit about property relief for seniors, because I know that that's something near and dear to your heart, and I know both of us really, really care about the seniors in our district and in the Commonwealth, having many people, not only in our own families, but
Right.
the respect that we have for our senior population. Why don't we talk a little about property tax relief?
Well, what's so frustrating, Judge Arnone, is that seniors who have lived in the South Hills their entire lives, have paid taxes their entire lives, then have to retire on a fixed income, most usually, and then they have property taxes increasing year after year after year, a lot of times to the maximum allowed by the law. Mm-hmm. And I've talked to so many seniors who say, I might have to move from Bethel Park. I might have to move from another community because I can't afford the property taxes. So I'm a co-sponsor on a bill that would freeze property taxes for senior citizens. It wouldn't eliminate them, but it would freeze it. So when a senior turns 60 years old and is living in that house as a primary residence, then property taxes cannot increase. But just taking a step back, we got to look at why property taxes are increasing. Roughly 70 cents on every new dollar raised by school property taxes is going to the broken pension system. So that's why, again, it's so important to have private sector style factors with the state pension system. So when a school district does raise its taxes, dollar for dollar is going for infrastructure with that school, improvements in education and programming, et cetera, not to the broken pension system.
Yeah, and that's real important. And people might think, well, gee, how does this relate to even back to the courts?
Right.
And how it relates, and I know you know this, is, unfortunately so often, whether it be seniors or other individuals that maybe can't afford the kind of taxes or the burdensome taxes that relate to their household, then the household becomes in disrepair. And then all of a sudden it is an issue for the courts, because now they're having zoning and ordinances issues and ordinance issues related to upkeep of their home. And all of a sudden it becomes a problem for the neighborhood.
Judge Arnone, you're absolutely correct. We really see a ripple effect that's going out throughout the Commonwealth because of because of the pension that's just totally out of control. And again, $64 billion unfunded liability.
Absolutely. And leaving our seniors and going to another subject matter, our children.
Yes.
And again, another place that you and I share a lot in common with regard to caring about kids.
Right.
And that we'll talk a little bit about that after we talk about a couple of these subject matters. We put our money where our mouth is as far as presentations and drug and alcohol programs and everything else that we do together for the kids. But let's talk a little bit about protecting our children and something I know you're working real hard on, the mandatory cross-reporting.
Yes, thanks, Judge. I'd love to talk about that. So I have a bill that's mandatory cross-reporting, and it's mandatory cross-reporting for those who are suspected of abusing children and those who are expected of abusing animals. And just taking a step back, when I was a district judge, you and I both would talk about this, is that the same defendants that were coming before us for child abuse oftentimes had come before us or came before us in subsequent weeks for abusing animals. And the FBI has studied this. There's roughly an 80 to 85% correlation between defendants who abuse children and defendants who abuse animals. So we know it's that same demographic of criminal. So my idea is this: if Child and Youth Services go into a home and they don't see any indications of child abuse, because it's relatively easy to cover up child abuse. You can put makeup on a child, children wear clothing, etc. If the CYS officer does not see child abuse but sees an emaciated dog, an abused cat, much harder to cover that up. If they see that, then that officer has to report to the Humane Society or Animal Control in the municipality. Then what happens is that animal control officer, the Humane Society officer, comes out, gets another bite of the apple, can take another look at the kids, and hopefully that will lead to more prosecutions and more convictions of those who abuse children and animals.
You know, and again, talking about that ripple effect, whether it be the real important subject matter of abuse of children and or animals, which you just kind of married the two, if you will, if that individual has access to children. When you see that, you see a whole host of other problems, whether it be mental health, drug, again, problems with the household. And that's why, and I've talked about this a lot to the powers that be and the communities, particularly, really in both communities, of how important it is to continue the zoning and ordinance upkeep. And when you see a home that's in need of repair or demolition even, as far as that goes, we must take that as a top priority, because that kind of stuff, when you see a house that has all kind of problems, you know there's more going on there than just meets the eye. Plus, it's not good for the neighborhood. It's not good for the community at large.
You're right. And we do, I know this, we're going off in a lot of different directions here. But
as we always do.
Of course. But you were hitting on some blight issues. And I was just at the Allegheny League of Municipalities conference, and I hear this all the time when speaking with municipal groups, is that blight is a problem. And I know you see it, I've seen it when I was a district judge. You have a house that's foreclosed upon, the bank actually does not have ownership of the house because the title stays with the owner.
Exactly.
Well, the owner has no incentive to take care of the house, and the bank doesn't want to come in and take care of it until they're getting ready to sell it. And what happens? The property values in the area decreases, you have blight. So a lot of people are taking a look at how to resolve that and seeing what we can do to maybe force title to go with the lending institution. But I'm getting way ahead of myself, but it's a problem.
I'm glad you're bringing that up, because it's a huge problem.
Right.
It's something that should be on the forefront. And we've talked about, you and I have talked about this for years. And that blight concern, particularly in areas like Bethel Park and even Upper St. Clair for sure, is that once that snowball effect starts going down the hill, it
Right.
catches a lot of areas and people, and so that's what we don't want to see happen.
Exactly.
Because I've seen it happen in other areas, and it's not a good thing, and it
Exactly.
causes a lot of then you're talking about not only decrease in property taxes, the demographics, the drug problems, everything else that
Right.
goes with that. Kids going to the houses. That's why we need to tear these homes down, hold people accountable. I have a couple very good examples of it that I've been dealing
Right.
with and working with the municipality and the township. And believe me, this is something that I feel is very
Right.
important. But let's. Is there anything more you want to? I know
Well,
we're
Judge,
going.
I don't know if the viewers know this, but your position is a legislative liaison for the Magisterial District Judge Association in the Senate. So I still tell people there's no harder working district judge than Ron Arnone. Not only are you
thanks.
constantly involved in the community with programming, I know we're going to talk about that, but you're also in Harrisburg advocating for issues like the blight, like the heroin epidemic, et cetera. So I think the community is very lucky to have you, and I have never seen a harder working district judge. So
Wow, thanks, Senator. And the truth of the matter is, I couldn't do it without friends like you that are in the leadership positions. That I know you and I have a great close relationship, and it's partnerships, it's partner building, it's advocating for those that need advocated for, the young and the old, and you and I share all of those same beliefs.
Absolutely.
And I know this is we're shamelessly plugging each other here, but we really do feel that way not only about each other but about our communities that we represent. And the senator is very hardworking, as am I. And I'm not embarrassed to say that. We both have very full schedules. I like working hard. I like giving back to our communities. That's what we were put in these positions to do, and we'll continue to do that. So I appreciate your kind words, and right back to you.
Thanks, Judge.
Did you want to do any clarifying on the language at all, or?
Briefly, I'd like to talk. I've got a bill that would clarify the language on mandatory reporting for those abusing children, and why this is so important. If you followed what happened in Plum, I believe it was about last year, maybe 18 months ago, the teachers did not report child sexual abuse that was going on with the students. But there couldn't be prosecutions on them because the language is constitutionally vague. It's too vague. So I've worked with Professor Bruce Ankoviak. He was actually my professor when I was at Duquesne Law School. Nice. Former federal prosecutor. He now heads St. Vincent's program on criminology. Regardless, he and I drafted language which we believe will pass constitutional muster. I'm going to try to get that language passed, and again, that will lead to more prosecutions and more convictions of those who fail to report child sexual abuse. And the other law and order bill that I have that's already passed, if you don't mind me talking about it briefly,
please.
The Sanctuary Cities bill. It was Senate Bill 10, and I want to clarify that bill. What it does, and it passed 37-13, wasn't even close, it was bipartisan. What it does, it says this, that if there's a municipality, and we call it municipality of refuge, that refuses to have local law enforcement coordinate with ICE when there's a detainer for an undocumented worker, then that city or municipality will lose state funding. Additionally, they'll lose sovereign immunity. And that way we'll incentivize local municipalities to have their local law enforcement report when they have someone in their custody pursuant to a lawful arrest who has an ICE detainer. If you look at the horrible, horrible cases across the United States, there's 121 documented murders from undocumented workers that have been released from sanctuary cities. The Kate Steinle case, a very famous case in California, there was a horrible, horrible violent sexual assault that took place in Philadelphia because Philadelphia released an undocumented worker with an ICE detainer. So we need to do something about this. Hopefully the House will pass that. I believe they will. And hopefully the governor will do the right thing. But the way it looks like now is this looks like it passed the Senate with a veto-proof majority. I think it'll pass the House with a veto-proof majority, and we'll be able to make sure that we get rid of sanctuary cities in Pennsylvania.
Well, all I can say to that is hallelujah.
Thanks, Judge.
Really, and why I can say that is because it's the law.
You're right.
And I mean, our very Constitution and We are a land of laws. We are ruled by law.
Right.
That's what we're supposed to adhere to.
Right.
And any of these folks that are out there, making comments and trying to establish these illegal platforms
Right.
out there, it's just not right. And I am to adhere to the Constitution and to the laws that guide us and bind us.
We're a nation of laws, and we have to respect our laws. And just one more thing, I as you know, I talk to local police all the time. Some of them are very close friends. They want to report when there's a detainer. I mean, but the municipalities, some of the sanctuary cities, are not allowing law enforcement to do the job. And the other thing is the detainer. This is zero extra work. As you know, if we have somebody in court and we release them on their own recognizance, release them with bail, and they post, if there's a detainer from another county, we have to alert that other county, or we have to have our constable transport the prisoner to the other county. Why we don't do this with ICE when we do it with other counties is beyond me.
Well, that's a great point, and I just had a couple of issues recently here, and believe me, I know these departments certainly follow and adhere to that process, and so that the residents of this area can feel safe that that's what's going on, and it should. I mean, you brought up the perfect example of that, and that is that it not only is it the law, but when we do it from county to county or even state to state, why would we not do it from some illegal alien to another country?
Exactly.
That it doesn't even make sense that this is not going on and not the subject of common sense.
Right.
And as much as maybe the issue or the person didn't have any issues, or whether they're undocumented or whatever, I think the platform is: are they a criminal?
Right.
Are there warrants?
Right.
Is there concerns about that person? That's mainly what everyone's concerned with, I think.
Exactly.
But anyways, let's talk a little bit about, I guess, just touch on the gaming and expansion. I know you've been kind of working hard on that, and you wanted to bring it up. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, I'm really bullish on gaming expansion, and the reason is we know that we're going to have roughly a $2.7 billion shortfall in the budget. So we need to have revenue. We also need to see where we have waste, fraud, and abuse. But just going back to gaming, the demographics of gaming is changing. As more millennials come into the market, of course I'm a millennial, we have fewer and fewer people that are going into a casino playing slots. Gaming has moved on to laptops, cell phones, etc. So what the gaming expansion that I'm pushing is doing is it's keeping up with the market. So for example, iGaming, internet gaming. We know people are gaming online. The casinos themselves want to legalize it, regulate it, and tax it. It would be a huge win for the state in terms of revenue. And through the local share agreement, 4% off the top comes back to the host, 2% to the host municipality, 2% to the host county. It pays for our libraries, for instance. There's tons of RCAP money, the economic development money that comes in to Allegheny County from the local share agreement with the casino. We could get even more of that if we would just expand to iGaming. There's also a piece of it that would, it's called iLottery, for the sale of lottery tickets online, which will increase sales of lottery tickets. Michigan did it, and not only was there an increase in the lottery through, of course, iTicket sales, the brick and mortar stores like the 7-Elevens, convenience stores, saw an increase of about 15% because more people wanted in the lottery. I also have a bill to legalize daily fantasy sports, DraftKings, FanDuel, etc. The industry came to me. They wanted to be legalized because right now the Attorney General could come in at any minute and shut down that industry. So, and I have consumer protections in there. For example, you have to be 21 to play daily fantasy sports. No betting, or not betting, but no playing with college or high school. It has to be at the professional level.
Sure.
That's part of it. Another part of it, which is a huge part of it, is legalizing video gaming terminals. And whenever I'm in a VFW or an American Legion, can we just legalize these machines? We rely on this income. We know that there's in excess of 40,000 video gaming terminals in bars and taverns and VFWs, what have you, right now in the Commonwealth. We need to tax them, regulate them, license them, get that revenue, and bring this industry out of the shadows, and then and open this up. So we can expect about $500 million from VGTs alone, and that's not including iGaming, iLottery, et cetera. So we also have a provision there, $2.5 million off the top for the heroin epidemic, 2.5 off the top for volunteer fire departments, and I'm going to credit with you with that idea because I know you were pushing that in Harrisburg. 2.5 off the top for EMS personnel, and we have a hold harmless in there for property relief for seniors. So I'm very bullish on this, and it's been a lot. Besides sanctuary cities, my other focus has really been on gaming expansion.
We're going to get into the area of talking about the drug problem, the epidemic that's heroin, and you touched on it. But before we jump into that real quick, I wanted to just update the folks on where we're at with the medicinal marijuana, and briefly just give us the landscape there.
So medical marijuana passed last session. It was one of the first votes I took, overwhelming bipartisan. This isn't so much of a revenue generator as it's a way to make sure that physicians and patients have another option besides prescribing opioids. And I'm a firm believer that it's the opioid and the painkiller that's the true pathway to heroin. So if you allow a patient to take... Right, If you allow a patient to have medical marijuana, it'll cut down on the opioid prescriptions, and hopefully that will have some kind of impact on the heroin epidemic. Right now,
how far are we out?
About 9 months or so. So January of 2018 is when we can have dispensaries open and the
Any
grow
idea
sites.
how if they've named? I know that I believe it was McKeesport and North Braddock were the sites that they were looking at. Any idea if either of those were awarded? And
I'm not. So how it is if you want to be a grower or dispenser, you have to apply for that, and then they're trying to get geographical diversity. So there's an idea that a citizen in Pennsylvania shouldn't have to drive more than 45 minutes to a dispensary site. The grow sites are a little different because you can't dispense from a grow site.
These are two grow sites. So is there any decisions been made on any of that yet?
No decisions have been made of yet on
so
that.
So we're still out about 8, 9, 10 months before
we're out quite a ways. We're out quite a ways.
And of course, the federal government still doesn't sanction any of this. It's interesting because a lot of people don't realize, even though it's medicinal and it's approved in a number of states and now in the Commonwealth and starting to get going with that, it won't have an ID number, federal. It's not recognized by certain institutions in the medical communities.
Right.
So that's a whole other subject matter. We could probably do a whole show on that, but I didn't want to spend too much time on the medical marijuana. I just wanted to touch on it, but I do want to spend a little bit of time because I know something you and I have worked really hard on is some of the this heroin epidemic, and I always talk about the idea, my criminal caseload from 2015 to 2016 is up 27.5%.
Wow, I didn't know that.
27.5%.
Okay.
I'm touching toward 5,000 cases. Okay. The Allegheny County has seen 600 overdose deaths due to this heroin epidemic, and the outreaching counties, Washington, Westmoreland, et cetera, they're all in the hundreds. This is truly an epidemic of wide proportions, and I always say, when the United States population is 4.3% of the world's population, and yet we consume 95% of the world's hydrocodone.
Right.
Do you think we have a drug problem? And so this is something that you and I have worked really hard on. I know you continue to push certain legislation, and you and I have done a lot of drug awareness programs, and I believe that's a good place to start with drug and alcohol awareness programs and try to prevent as much as educate. What do you want to say about the heroin problem?
It's so multifaceted. First off, I'm just glad that our community has taken its head out of the sand and said we do have a problem. Short anecdote: right when I got out of the Navy in 2012, I spoke with your predecessor, Judge Whita, and I said, "What are the biggest problems that our youth are facing?" He told me truancy and the heroin epidemic, and I thought he was kidding, because in the Navy, heroin heroin wasn't the drug of choice in the Navy. If you were going to do a drug, it was going to be something other than heroin.
Sure.
And when I was in school, everybody I felt wanted to be in school. And then I found out, no, he was not kidding. Heroin is the biggest problem. So I think one thing is recognizing that heroin is the epidemic. That is the problem with our youth.
And that ties into, so many other issues with the mental health issue, with overprescribing,
Right.
with the idea of self-medicating because we're not dealing enough with the mental health issue.
There's so much. First, I think we need a paradigm shift, and I know you do a great job, and I try to do this as a judge too. We need a paradigm shift of getting away of just having punishment for the user and view it more as an issue where that person needs either mental health treatment or a substance abuse treatment or a clinic or a facility, and that way you break the cycle.
Absolutely, and we're working on that.
Yeah.
And the other thing I know you're working hard on, and there's many advocating for it, is delivery, drug delivery due to death. Like somebody delivers drugs and an individual dies due to an overdose.
Right.
That's some drug delivery resulting in death is the statute, but
Yes.
that's something I know you're working on and we're working real hard on.
Yeah, we have to recognize there's a difference between the supply side and the demand. You reduce the demand by getting people help and treatment. You reduce the supply by stiffer penalties and enforcement of drug laws. So,
and what the other thing that I really want to, unfortunately, we run so short of time so quickly. Our show, we have so much to talk
every
about.
time I'm on, this happens.
Yeah,
so.
and it's great, and I love it, and that's why I'll have you back very soon again. Is the idea that all these things that we put out there, we're doing together. We're doing programs together. You have a lot of programs coming up. I'm going to ask Dave Cable to actually, he has a bulletin and he runs on the bulletin board. We're going to present him with all these fairs and drug and alcohol programs you have coming up.
Let me quickly just plug this, because we have been doing senior citizen fraud prevention programs in the community, and what ties into this is our shredding event that we're trying to do annually at Bethel Park.
Yes.
I know that'll be on the banner, but that's coming up in the summer. We've also been out in the schools quite a bit. In fact, right after we're done taping this, we're going to a school to do a drug and alcohol prevention program.
Absolutely.
So I'm so excited that I have a really good partner with you to work on in the South Hills community, and through education, we can really make a difference.
It's so true, Senator. And this is a new one, not the one that you just put out on your Mass Bulletin.
Right.
This is another new program we're doing, and we continue to do these programs for the kids and for their benefit. Folks, once again, thank you so much for joining myself and my wonderful guest, Senator Guy Reschenthaler. He's a good friend, he's a hard worker, and he's doing a great job on behalf of the district. Once again, remember, be a leader, not a follower. Join us again for another show of Beyond the Bench. We're excited to be out in the community and see you, and let us know how we're doing. Have a nice day.